Okay.
Get a good connection.
Right.
Looking good. Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Hi.
So it is the very first time that we have a multitude of streams. We are working today with Happy Harris here together. And Happy Harris has his stream on his side. So you will find the same video that you see here also on his channel. And you will find it also here. So we are playing a little bit around. It could lead to some problems. Let's see. But now let's talk about the topic. We are here today together to talk a little bit about the first apps that we created, our experience with it, what we have done, and what we are working currently on. And yeah, so please, Happy Harris, do us the favor and also introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Happy Harris, and the thing is that sometimes I will ask people if Happy Harris is actually my real name. So Happy Harris is not my real name. My real name is like Muhammad Haris bin Samingan. My Happy Harris is just like a social media handle that I got stuck for a few years ago. And currently what I'm doing right now is running my own like business, and it's basically education, teaching you guys Flutter. And yeah, thank you guys for joining us in the stream. And yeah, I think we are making a breakthrough in terms of tech live stream, 2 live streams in 2 YouTube channels. God damn, we are disrupting the live stream game. Yeah. So Max over here is pretty like his YouTube channel, Flutter Explained. And that's literally what he's doing. He's literally explaining Flutter, and he's doing amazing live streams up to 3 hours. I can't do that. That's a lot of commitment to really do those long live streams. And we are going to share like what he has introduced, our first Flutter app. So it's going to be horrible, but that's the point of sharing our Flutter code. All right. So Max, so what is the first app that you have created so far?
My very first app that I have ever created with Flutter ever created, is an electric power consumption tool that I had, because I was here in my home and we have heated our place with power. So I needed to always write my stuff down and calculate how much energy I consumed and how expensive it will be. And what I did then is I needed an app for that. And I said, I have to create that. And after some training and doing and playing around with Flutter, I was really surprised how easy it is to get my app running there. And I was very happy. And to be honest, it's now like 7 months ago, like in January, I started with the app, and it was done in February around. So I was very happy with the result for a side project that I usually never finish. So
So we all.
I think everyone can relate to that. In the meantime, everyone, if you have any questions, please leave them already in the chat so we can answer them in the end and we can go to them just as a reminder. And now back to you, Happy Harris. So what have you, or Mohammed, sorry. So what have you created for your first app?
So for me, when I stumbled upon Flutter, I think the only thing that's available in terms of tutorials, right, was a to-do app. So I just copy the tutorial and just figure it out. And Flutter was Flutter was the first mobile framework that I have ever explored. And in terms of the development, it was really like, I would say something different. And that made me like, okay, I think I want to invest my time learning Flutter. So my first app was just an app called To Do. So basically it was something that was what do you call that, a meme, like do, that kind of like I guess meme sound that was popular back then. So it's a To-Do app, and it's pretty simple, and it was built 2 years ago. And the Flutter back then was in beta, and it was specifically version 2. So let us share our screen. So let me share my screen for this, right? So you could see the To-Do, and then you could see that the version 2 over here. And let me just go through a little bit of my code, because I think you guys might be wondering how Flutter looks like 2 years ago. So it looks actually pretty like normal, pretty what you have seen so far. But I think the thing about the file, right, is that there is this like new keyword. So Max, have you seen this new keyword before? So let me
Yeah,
zoom in for you guys.
tutorials, I see that a lot.
Yeah. So
Old
previous
tutorials.
yeah, so I think they copied JavaScript, because when you want to create a new object, right, you will probably have to use the new keyword over here. Then I think there was a change in the Flutter or Dart SDK to say like, okay, the new keyword is not necessary. Then it was huge for a lot of us because we have to keep on typing new. So that's why. Then yeah, and that was my first time using Firestore as well. And Firestore 2 years ago was also in beta.
Mhm.
So I was working on Flutter, which is a beta framework, with Firestore, which is a beta database in Firebase services. So trying to invest your time in learning two beta tech is a little bit of risk, but it pays off, Yeah. So I think to do that is pretty straightforward. But
Mhm.
Max, your app, I think it's not that straightforward. Would you want to demo on what your app is or looks like?
Sure, with pleasure. So I can just share my screen at the moment. Oh, sorry. And there, the first problem happened. So I shared the wrong
It's
screen
okay.
at my place.
It's okay, man.
So let's do that way. So you maybe see now my screen, hopefully. So you see that nice little app that I have currently on my phone running. So I will always watch a little bit down. But what you can see here is my power consumption app. And you can see on the top one, like the foundation price or the base price that you have to pay every month. Then on the right side, you see what you pay for every hour of power that you use and so on. And it will calculate in the center what amount of energy you will use. And additionally, on the bottom, you see how the power consumption has changed from 1 month to another. And as you see, that was my very first app where I tried a little bit around with diagrams. I implemented like this nice like swipeable part that I wanted to integrate, and I really, really invested a lot of time in that.
Oh
And
my.
stuff that exists like today with the qubit pattern like replay or something. So as you can maybe saw that I redo my stuff. That was not that easy as I expected
No,
in
it's
the first place. And yeah, so it's kind of responsive even. So that was oh, you cannot see that very well, but it looks way better on the phone. I promise you that. Oh,
it's loading. It's loading. Oh yes, yes.
So you can see it's also responsive. And if you have seen my very first video on the YouTube channel, it was exactly about this topic, media queries and layout builder. And so I come to the idea to show that more. And of course, dark mode is also important today, right? And yeah, so let's keep that up again so that it looks better. But exactly, that was my whole app and my whole idea. And the biggest problem that I had with it was really to get all the calculation correct, because normalizing of amount of money about multiple months and so on, if someone don't enter some ideas or data, it's very difficult actually.
Yeah, it is. And the thing about your app, right? It is really something that it looks simple, but I think you have gone through enough pain to know that it's not that simple. So I think a lot of us might see that this simple app, like, oh, it's just like numbers, but you
Yeah,
really never see the back end and the calculations
it's
and
true.
the debugging. So how long did it take for you to actually finish like uh uh the how I say, a stable version of your app?
Mhm. The very first code line that I wrote was at the beginning of, I think in the middle of December, something like that. And I really finished it off and I put it on Google Play Store, which was very important for me, in mid of January. So like 1 month incomplete. And I didn't have full time, of course, because of Christmas and New Year's Eve and so on. But it was quite an achievement, and like 3 or 4 weeks in full time in that case.
Yeah.
So that was the time that I took at the end. But I was very happy with it, and I'm still happy with it, even though that it's still in beta. I didn't release it yet fully. But maybe it
I
will.
Yeah. It definitely works. And I think that's the beauty about Flutter, because I think a lot of us, right, when we build our apps in Flutter, that's like we are so amazed on how fast like Flutter really, like, yes, we might be like selling you like Flutter, but honestly, if you've tried it before, it really is very fast to create a Flutter app.
Yeah.
So yeah. So like for myself, I used to work in a startup. So let me share with another app that I've built, right?
Mhm.
So let me share my screen over here. So this app that I have, I don't have the code base because I'm not working for them anymore.
Mhm.
So, but this app is called a PS Love or period tracker. So
Mhm.
females tend to track their periods. Sometimes they write on notes, but sometimes they use an app.
Mhm.
So for me, I was working on this period tracker app, right? And the thing is that, yeah, it took us quite a short time. Even though I had some help, I had another colleague who's working on this app, but it was like kind of amazing to create something, I would say, beautiful, because a lot
Mhm.
of apps that you create with, I guess, Android and iOS, they always have their own I would say, design. So it doesn't look very, you don't have the freedom to create. But like if you were to look like in this app itself, like it's actually like a designer dream to see their design into fruition or into an actual app. So that's why I think a lot of like I would say designers and developers love about Flutter, is because how well it can translate the design into code, which I think what Flutter is trying to do. So
Absolutely.
yeah. And
Cool.
have you tried animations before, Max?
Animations, absolutely. Thanks to Matab, I learned a lot about them because she's very into that topic. She likes that
Right.
something moves on the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah, so animations, I think in Flutter, I would say it's a little bit I wouldn't say it's easy, but
Mhm.
I would say it's straightforward, and you could see that this animation wasn't so hard to do. But for me, I'll give you like a secret. You know, this image this animation, right, is
Mhm.
not actually built in Flutter. It's actually images stacked to
Ah.
each other, because at that point of time I was really something that, I mean, Flutter wasn't my I was very new to Flutter, so it wasn't built by me, but it was built by my other colleague, and he was also new to Flutter. So what
Mhm.
he did was he just put the images back to back, and then he just made the timing of the waves, right, different, so
Mhm.
it looks like it's actually like a cool wave
Yeah.
but it's not optimized because the images aren't, is not exactly great lah. So do you have any experience, Max, with animations that you've built in apps before?
Yeah, I have several. The most I use is animated container. I just
Mm,
like that it's easy to use, and I'm just like it if it's very easy and not too complex to use. So of the time, I really use the implicit animations, animated container, animated text, whatever. So all of them, I really like that. I have my hard time to implement the animation package from Google. If you have ever tried that, I like the animations there. It looks so fluent if something is moving, but
yeah.
it's so difficult to really bring them on point and bring them into your application. Even though that the open drawer and close drawer are really easy to implement, but I think the navigation parts, I really had my struggle there. So that was a very difficult point there.
Yeah,
So,
so yeah, I do agree, because it might look simple, even though you
mhm.
have packages to implement this animation, you still probably need to like learn. And at the same time, have you tried Rive, or before it was Flare?
Yeah,
Have you tried Flare or Rive before?
I used Rive actually to get for my Mother's Day gift from my mother. I sent her an Rive animation with all the stuff in and created
Oh,
it
that's
in
so
Rive, and
cool.
then I sent it as a GIF to her. So that was my very
Oh,
first animation attempt, and I really love Rive to use it, and also Floppy files. If you have heard of them, they are
yes.
really amazing and easy to use, and that is
Uh,
really cool that you have the opportunities to use that very quickly and that you don't have to implement code for it, which is always a good thing, I think, and
yeah.
helps most of the designers because they usually have a very cool idea for an animation in their mind. They create everything. And I know that from my day to day work that they have sometimes very cool ideas, but it's very difficult, at least for me, to create them in CSS. And I think a lot of designers and a lot of developers would agree that if you want to do it in web development, it's very challenging. And I don't know how hard it is in Swift or on Android.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also there, it will be taking a lot of time to implement the same animations. And I don't want to start with React Native because I have too less experience with it.
Yeah, and I think I don't have a lot of experience in animation in other frameworks, but I think Flutter, I mean, what they're trying to promote is that the 60 FPS. So everything that you do in Flutter is like smooth. And now they're trying to break it to like, now we want to do it 124 FPS because now phones are getting that smooth. I'm like, whoa, pretty like, yeah. So let's get back to our like first app, right? So I think yes. Do you have any questions, Max?
I have some questions. Yeah. So what did you love the most about your application that you created the first time?
So the first time I think I've created the to-do app was that I think most developers can relate. It works. It works. So for me, because back then I didn't have a lot of developer experience. So I only had like a bootcamp experience, and it was a very challenging experience for me to learn. I was learning Ruby on Rails, and it was very fast paced. And as a person with zero experience, right, we really had a lot of like debugging to do because we don't know what programming is. So for Flutter, I wouldn't say that I've never faced the debugging part, but it was fewer than what I've experienced in like Ruby on Rails, because maybe I had some experience. That's why I'm able to code faster. But in terms of Flutter, I would say like the bug debugging session is not as painful as like Ruby on Rails for me, because that's the only experience that I had. And then like when I implement with Firestore, it was something that like, oh, I don't have to create my database. You know, like because back then you had to maybe use MySQL, and then you have to learn how to do queries in MySQL. But in Firestore, it's in Dart, which is the same language you use in Flutter. So that's what I love about the app when I build it, because I don't have to learn more. I don't have to learn two other tech or languages. It's just like Firestore library inside Flutter, and then when I just do a bit of debugging, and then it kind of works. And the only in point that I had was very, very simple: how to show dates. So I didn't know how to show dates in Flutter. And then I realized you have to use this package called INTL, or internalization. Yeah. So I was figuring out back then how to do it. Then I had to Google, and then I finally found the answer. But other than that, the experience, it was quite smooth. The debugging wasn't so painful, and yeah, it works. Like that was like my aha moment that Flutter, I think, will go big. So what about you, about the app that you have shown so far?
Yeah, well, my very favorite part was the responsive design when I started with that, because it was completely, I used it in web development all the time, right? So media queries and all this stuff. But the problem with that was that I never did it in Flutter before. I only used like tutorial things, like I tried to get this to-dos done and so on, but I always locked it inside of inside of portrait mode so that my app don't navigate. So if you change it, and I was like, that can't be the solution to all things, right? So there needs to be a better option. And then to rearrange everything, that it worked automatically, it showed into the right direction how it should be. That was very fantastic feeling for myself. Additionally, what I loved the most was how easy it was to use for myself. So for my problem, it was fantastic. Then I could just recreate everything around it. And that was really impressive for me to just get into it, learn everything that I needed to do, and was ready in some situations there without long actually working on this stuff. And also found a lot of resources everywhere that I needed for a specific topic. That was really useful. And what did you don't like in your app, in the second app maybe? So what would you change if you had the opportunity today?
Yeah, I think a lot of developers would love to like have a, if I were to go back in time, I would do things differently. So for me, I think for the to-do app, I wouldn't say I would change because I think it was a simple app. But
Mhm.
for the app, the PS Love period tracker app, one thing
Mhm.
I would change is the state management.
Mhm.
So when we started to create the Flutter app, right?
Mhm.
Back then the state management wasn't a lot, or it was hard to grasp. So,
Mhm.
like for example, there was no such thing as provider back then. There
Mhm.
was such thing as inherited widget. I have no idea what was an inherited widget for the longest time. Honestly, like until provider came, right? Then
Mhm.
like maybe few months before provider came, then I realized, oh, that's what inherited widget is for. Then I'm like, oh my god. So I didn't know what was inherited widget. So I used a lot of set state actually.
Mhm.
Then the next state management that I did was block, and it
Mhm.
wasn't the block library. It was the block that was by Didier Bullions, the guy who's pretty like advanced in Flutter. If you guys heard of him,
Mhm.
and I tried to implement his block state management, and it was better, but it wasn't the best. And then
Mhm.
lastly, when provider came about in Google I/O, there was like the saving light. Oh my god, provider is so simple. Then when I think either Remy Ruslet, the author of provider package, uh say that it was a wrapper for inherited widget, I was like, oh, okay. Now I know what's I know what's inherited widget. So if I were to change back in time, I'll probably use inherited widget. Like it is very specific, but if I really like, honestly, it will really help me in my development because back then, right, it was really
Mhm.
messy. Like the code base was really messy. What I mean by messy is that you using provider was simple. You just put data at the top of your tree, for example, and then at the bottom you can just get the data. Back then I didn't know, so I put, I will create the params and fields, and then I'll just put in one layer at a time, and it was
Yeah.
messy. And if I had to change a field, I have to change every widget field. Then I'm like, oh my god. Then when debugging comes and you want to change your feature, then I'm like, oh my god, it's a pain in the ass. So that is one thing I will change. My understanding about inherited widget, honestly. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what about you, Max? I think you have a lot you want to change.
Yeah, I have also a lot of stuff, especially because I was very excited that days when I tried to get that app running somehow. So I started to bring all the technologies together without really understanding them because, well, I do now Flutter since 1.5 years, more or less. So I started to learn everything, right? Like everyone else, I read a lot about state management and started like, okay, we need provider, we need block, we need, what did I learn? Provider,
Qubit?
block, MobX was also part
Oh
of it.
yes, yes, yeah.
And the thing is, I wanted to have that in this application. So I started to bring all that stuff together somehow. And sometimes I use this, sometimes a little bit of that. Then I had in every area, in every widget, I used a completely different approach. And at the
Yeah.
end, I didn't understand anymore where I do what and why the state is
Oh
changing
my
now
god.
there and not there
Oh
anymore.
shit. Oh.
And all that stuff. So that took me really long. And what I would like to do in the future, at least, or what I have done for my applications in general now, is taking one approach or one package for one problem. So,
Hmm.
of course, it doesn't have to be the best one. I don't know if Provider is the solution for everything. I mean, Get It is also a fantastic tool, and MobX and Block, they have a fan base that is so huge. So, that makes sense that this is also a very good technology. But take one and stick to it.
Yes, yes. I think that's really good advice for like beginner developers as well.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people who started Flutter, then they were like, oh no, what state management should I use? And then they will go to like flutter.dev, and there's like a whole bunch of like state
Exactly.
management that the Flutter team has curated for us, right? So I think yeah, just stick to one, whether it's provider, MobX, whatever, stick to one. Because once you have a lot, like what Max and actually myself, when I implemented the PS Love, it was so messy. Shit, is this set state? Oh, is this a block? Is this a provider? I was like, oh no, shit. So just have one main state management, and don't worry about like new state management, because there's a lot of people who do that, which is fine, which is okay. But
Yeah.
just stick to one, and don't worry so much about the new stuff. And I think this is going to be a very common question that I think people will ask in the Reddit and also maybe on your YouTube channel comments and my YouTube channel comments. Which state management, right, would
Mhm.
you recommend to people who just start Flutter?
Who just start Flutter?
Yeah,
To be
who's
honest,
just
I would say start with set state until you come to the first point when you feel you understood why it is not the best approach. So the problem is if you are new in Flutter, you don't really get all the concepts and you don't get all the problems that it brings with it. So in set state has only the problem that you have to pass down everywhere your parameters. So if you have a parent widget and the sudden is child widget and child widget, suddenly you have to pass it down the whole widget tree if you don't use inherited widget or something. And then you can go to the journey of understanding state management, why you need it, and select the package. If I would recommend it to someone, begin with provider because it is like a golden hammer. It works nearly for everything. And if you are coming already from a software engineering background and you want to separate everything wonderfully and beautifully, then I would recommend you something like Gedit or understanding like MobX or Block if you are very good in reactive development, like a lot of Angular developers are, or a lot of React developers that I know. Then you can also go into more stronger packages like Block, because I think Block is a very massive package that you have to understand a lot of concepts. And if you get them, you can have a very cool application at the end, but you really have to understand all the different parts that it comes with it. So that would be my route to go for new developers. How about you?
So for me, I think I also will advise something similar to yours, like really understand the basics. Like set state is like the most basic state management that anyone could learn, you know? So like
Mm-hmm.
init state. And the thing is that it's okay to implement init, set state and also provider as well. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, I have this like maybe philosophy, right? To always use what's available. So the
Mm-hmm.
thing is for provider, even though you need to download it as a dependency, change notifier is part of the Flutter library itself. So for
Yeah.
me, it makes sense to use provider and change notifier. And
Mm-hmm.
then personally, I have not tried any other state management other than the block state management that is not the library but the streams and the things that you have to manually put in, right? I would
Mm-hmm.
just recommend providers because from my experience, and I've been using it in a production app, in my teaching and other apps, right? It's simple enough to understand. And I would say, like, if you are not scaling up your app, then
Mm-hmm.
for most of us, I think provider is enough. But if you want to scale up, then you might want to, like Redux. There is like Flutter Redux, and if you're comfortable in Redux in other like frameworks, right, then you might want to see and experiment with Redux.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also like reactive, like you say, and then there's like MobX, Gedit, a lot of other state management that they have their own perks. And I think you've done a video about Riverport, right? Which is another
Yes.
one
Very.
by by Remy also, who's the
Mm-hmm.
author of Provider. He's crazy, man. Like he's trying to like solve all these complicated like architectural kind of designs in terms of software. And but don't have to worry about Riverport or whatever. Just focus on set state, and the next will be provider. Because
Yeah.
one thing I like about provider is that it is not actually like a state management thing. You can like use block and provider together. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a nice add-on. So that's why I feel that providers will be the next step. Then if you have something that's scalable or you're working in a team, they can discuss what do you call that state management that you it's necessary for the situation.
Yeah. Just one small addition because the chat asks right now, are they answering questions? And yes, we will. We will just put it to the end. Then we will collect in the meantime. And so ask your questions. We will come to that later. It's just that you are not getting confused what we are doing here. So thank you,
Yeah,
John, for asking.
yeah.
So Cool. But that's about our apps. I think we had a quite a journey, right? So what did you find the most challenging about it to finish your app at the end? So if you would be a new developer and you would start with your app, what do you think was the most challenging part to get starting?
So to get started with Flutter, I would say like for me personally, because I didn't have a lot of experience, I would just create a Flutter app,
Mhm,
and I would not also like I will go through one tutorial and then
mhm,
build something on my own, because I think from what I've observed so far, a lot of people are stuck in this thing like called tutorial hell. So they
yeah.
keep on building tutorials and following tutorial, which is fine, but there will be come to a point where the tutorials will teach you so much,
Mhm,
and I think it's better if you were to come up with an idea. I think all of us have a lot of ideas, and then make it into an app,
mhm,
and that's where like you see how you are able to make your ideas and your different problems and your,
mhm,
we call it user stories, into a feature of the app. So for example, you think that you are unproductive person, so you want to do a to-do app, okay,
mhm.
then you might want to implement Firestore or Firebase authentication, so you can follow a tutorial and then at the same time you implement it as well. So
Yeah.
for me, like by having like for me, I have my workmates to teach about Flutter, but if you
Mhm,
don't then having your own side project that is useful in real life, I will
mhm.
actually help you motivate you to learn Flutter, because I think a lot of us might be afraid to like create our own apps and then might be afraid to release in the app store, but it's fine. Like there's a
I
lot of
really
apps
like
in the app.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying there because I don't know if you have seen it, but we are working together with Chingu for free, and they get from
Yes.
us that help in mentorship and everything, and they exactly want to cover that problem that you come in this tutorial purgatory, they call that, so that you
Yeah.
always make tutorial after another, and you never finish a real project, and with that you never feel good about what you have done there. So
Yeah.
even though if it is just a button, sometimes you can be very proud of just a button because
Yeah.
beginners, especially, they don't know about that. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
maybe we should go over some questions already from the users because I got like a ton of them. So
Same here. Okay, so I think you just choose one question, and at the same time I'll choose one.
all right. So fantastic. My question is, what is NVVM?
Okay, so I
From
okay.
Fabia Bat.
Yeah, but okay, thank you for that question. For me, I know MV, I know model view,
Mhm.
and okay, I know MVC, model view controller. I don't know
Yeah.
what's the VM. So I think Max, do you have an answer?
I think that is the model view model control
Oh,
principle. So there is like a
right.
whole package around that whole thing. So that is a real big architectural idea,
Mm,
and you can really work on that. And you will find a lot of documentation of that in the internet. It's like a whole architectural setup for your whole application. How do you think about different parts? Model
mm.
view model. Thank you, Aravind.
Yeah. So if you want more information about MVVM, you can definitely Google it. There's definitely someone who written an article about it. I don't
Mhm.
have experience in it. I only know MVC, which is Model View Controller,
Yeah.
from the background of Ruby on Rails. Yeah. So for my question, okay, I don't have a lot of questions actually, but for my questions, what is the cheapest backend database for real estate? Very specific, real estate app by Flutter and Flutter Web. So, okay, what's the cheapest backend database? So, Max, what do you think? What's your opinion on this?
How that's difficult. A cheapest solution for that. Well, Firebase is at the beginning for free, and it will take a long time till you get there where you have to pay for it. But after that, it could be very expensive. On the other hand, if you reach that certain threshold, it's getting very expensive very fast. So the cheapest one, if you just want to play around, you could write your own. I think that would be maybe the cheapest one. And else, I don't know. Have you a good idea?
So for me, I don't have a lot of experience in other SQL except for, I mean, database except for Firebase, and I guess which one is that, Postgres, and I haven't really launched Postgres live before. So for me, I would say Firebase. And for me, I
Oops.
think
Sorry, my camera
Max,
shut off. I don't
Max,
know
oh
why.
no, oh no. It's okay.
Okay.
It's still alive, guys. Don't worry. Don't
Yeah.
panic. Okay. So okay. In the meantime, I will explain like my answer on this question. So
Mhm.
for me, I would say if you are working on a client app, which I think you are, real estate app, right? From my experience so far, if it goes big, right,
Mhm.
then I think Firebase is still scalable because it solves a lot of those scalability problems in terms of like fast expansion of database. But I would say um, if you know how to optimize your reads and writes in Firebase, it won't be very expensive. And like what Max have pointed out, it really takes a long time for you to pay, or basically to be like another tier of like usage of the Firebase services. So I would say since Firestore works very well with Flutter and also Flutter Web, then I would recommend, or we both will probably recommend Firebase or Firestore. Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you want to have another type of database, there's this thing called real-time database in Firebase. So you can check that out. And I think the use case for that is probably a chat. So if you want to
Mhm.
have a chat feature in your real estate app, then that's probably like it solves a lot of I guess use cases for most apps. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally agree there. As I said, the cheapest solution is always a very tricky question because also very cheap solutions can be very expensive at the end. Just to let you know, I tried to set up my laptop on the other hand so that I can come back with my image. Somehow we had there a problem. But in the meantime, I have another question from Joan, and he's asking, do we have a recommendation of layout building for Flutter?
Ah, all right. Okay, so I think I'll just answer first. While in the meantime, Max, you can don't worry, I can talk until you you have your image up. All right. So
Mhm.
for layout building, if you guys I think the answer is in the question itself. So if you mean by layout building, meaning like if there is a mobile layout, then it will build for mobile. If there's a web layout, then it will be building for web. If it was desktop layout, it will built for desktop, then the answer will be layout builder widget. So layout builder widget it's a very good app. It's a very good widget, not app. It's a very good widget for you to get the, I would say, the parent to widget what do you call that, size. So layout builder also have this like property called like max width and max height. So you can use that
Mhm.
to do your layout building. At the same time, there's this thing called media query. So media query, I think it's an object that's being passed down in your Flutter app itself. So you can use media query to ask it for its height and its width, and then you can do like conditionals, right? So you probably will say, oh, if the height or the width of this size is probably like 1080, so 1080 pixel, I don't know lah. So for example, for if the layout of this what do you call that, of this screen is like a web screen, then you will return a web view of your what do you call that, app. If it was a mobile, then yeah, so you can just what do you call that, bring out media query or even layout builder. Then
Yeah.
there is also another what do you call that, package that I also personally use. Is called, I forgot what is it called, but it was by, what's his name, like Field Stacks. So he
Mhm.
created one. He's a YouTuber for Flutter as well. So he created one package that he created, which I use, and it is pretty good. But I have to search on his. So, but in the end, also at the same time, I would say that layout building, I'm going to multitask. Layout building, it's pretty, I would say, straightforward because you will get the constraints of the different
Okay. Yeah, that's
stuff.
absolutely true. I think the package from Phil Stack is also responsive widgets or something
Ah,
called.
yes, I think this is, yeah.
Exactly. So that is also for responsive design and so on. The good thing is I managed it to come back and with my camera, at least in your stream at the moment. So I will be back in a second. And do you have more questions for me in the meantime?
Okay, so for me, I have another question. I mean, is Flutter? So this question is by Soft for You.
Mhm.
Nice name. Is Flutter good for making e-commerce web app?
Is Flutter good for e-commerce web app? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Web app is always a bit difficult at the moment because you should never forget web is still in beta. But in general, I would say Flutter is good for nearly every kind of app. So if you want to create an application that is usually for e-commerce, yeah, sure. Of course, there are some very good options that are currently done for, let's say, pure web. So if you just want to have a web shop, I would maybe recommend something like Shopify at the moment. But if you want to really develop it for yourself, then yes, it should work.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to share my screen. So the
Oh, that's
thing is, yeah. So the company that I worked for last, what do you call that? The company that I worked for previously, they use Flutter Web for their e-commerce site. So I was pretty impressed because like they use Flutter Web, and as well, if I'm not wrong, they use I don't know if they use Stripe or Razor Pay, but they are able to implement these payment features inside their e-commerce. So like let me just like go through on like how they done it so far, and it looks pretty nice, honestly. And then if you were to check out, and like all of this has been implemented all in Flutter Web.
mhm.
And I think the best thing about Flutter Web is how fast you can build this kind of like UI.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think the great thing about Flutter Web as well is, or Flutter, is that you can make it responsive easily, I would say. So
Mhm.
rather than having like CSS to like think about how everything should look like, you can use like media query, and then you can like build different kinds of views for your web app or even your mobile app to show you according to what do you call that, what views, whether it's in mobile or desktop or even
Yeah.
tablets.
I think responsive design is always a very important part. I hope we can hear us again, or me again, because I had some issues there. I need to add myself again to the stream. I still hope that works now.
That's
Exactly. But yeah, so the design and so on is always a very big challenging topic because it's very important for every app, right? So we got one question. He wants to create a beautiful app, but he gets stuck inside of the design, or he cannot create a beautiful design for it. So how would you approach something like that?
all right. So Max, do you want to answer, or I should answer that?
Whatever
Okay,
floats your
I
boat.
mean,
You feel you can
I'll
answer
answer
that,
that.
so go for it.
Okay, okay, I saw the question. What about animation design? I'm stuck right now because I feel like I'm developing doesn't looks good. Okay, so from my experience, I guess as a person who also built his own my own like products, right?
Mhm,
And to code it out, I would say like animations and design, you should always just put it out there, because I
mhm,
think what you should actually care about is how your customers or your users actually feel about your designs or animations, because in the end other people are going to use your app and not yourself, hopefully. Because that's the whole purpose of building an app, right? So people can get value from you and have a better life with your service or app that you have created. So don't
mhm,
worry so much on the animations and design. I think material is a really good design in itself to make your app look not so scrappy.
mhm.
When you build a simple button with a container or a card, and then it really looks like a like fully functioning app. So I think that's pretty cool about, I guess, material design. And even if you want to put in cappuccino, yeah, it's already there for you. So don't have to worry so much on the animations, I would say, or the design. Once like some people can just draw their own like wireframe and just use the material what do you call that, assets or material widgets from the material library, and then put it on and then they just ship it, then yeah,
But I
that's
can
it.
really understand the problem from him. So if you start with an application and you want to make it really beautiful and stand out like everything else, what I would suggest is usually finding some inspiration from other applications. For that, I use currently like two websites. that I really love. I explained that in the last live stream of mine. I don't have the websites currently in mind, but you can see all the designs from the current applications. Like, for example, Instagram, you can see how they structure their login screen, and you can find inspiration, what you can build. So you can learn there more about it. And that is absolutely useful, and makes a lot of sense to work on that stuff too, so that you bring more life into your app. Sometimes it can be something you talked about, a picture of cappuccino, for example. So if you just bring that in and center that in your part, it can look already beautiful. So it is just a little bit of a work that you have to bring in, and that could take sometimes a little bit of time there. But what I would suggest you is always create a design for it in the first hand, and then come into the difficult part where you develop everything, because writing code is always the difficult part, right? So if you have a design already, then you make your life very much easier. I think my very own app that I created myself, I printed every screen from my mockup and pinned it on my wall, that I can really see, okay, that is what I have to do. I want to navigate there and so on.
Nice.
And it really helped me to just structure my work every time.
Yeah.
So I can always recommend that. So then let's move on.
All right. So for me, I don't really have. Okay, I have one question. So by Nilesh, is using provider similar to using singleton since you are provided the same instance? So this is a very technical question. So for me, I would say provider similar to using singleton. I still can't wrap around my head on like singleton. But I would say like provider provides the same instance to any providers that you create in the widget tree. So if you have a value of 1 in the material app widget, and then if you want to get that value from that widget from your button, then it will provide the same thing. Or I would say, is it correct to say same instance? Like, is that correct, Max? Yeah.
The idea of a singleton is that it is only exists once in your whole application. So you create a class that only once exists, and you can change inside the different levels and states and so on. That is not completely true for a provider, because what happens if you move outside of a screen where the provider lives in or getting provided to, it could be that the provider gets completely deleted and disposed. So that means you create that singleton again. So it's not really a singleton pattern. If you would do something like get it, where you say a singleton, then it will really survive everything, and it will be there for you the whole time. So there is also where that factory pattern comes from, that you create a singleton instead of creating it all the time. You would just pass it then down.
Okay, the more I know. Yeah, no, because for me, when I search singleton, I really don't understand how it is, I would say, being implemented or useful. So yeah, thanks for really clearing up my doubts on that singleton question. Okay, so
I have here a very interesting question. I think a lot of people will ask that. So what is the best way to learn what APIs are? Here, the question is very specific to Flutter, but I'm pretty sure APIs is in general, right? Because nearly everything is an interface.
So I think, Max, you should, while I gather my thoughts, like, hey, wow.
Okay, all right. So API is always, or an application programming interface is, I think, the synonym. So it's calling that part where two applications want to communicate with each other. So they want to talk with each other. And then API, to learn it best way, is to first understand how is this created everything. So that means you want to talk from Flutter to, for example, Firebase. Then you need some kind of API. My mic is not working. I hope that is not true. You can hear me, or?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Is Max, your mic not working?
Yeah, I think I have two instances of myself in the chat, in the StreamYard at the moment. So I hope that my voice is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just continue. If I hear now that I don't be heard, then the stream works. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Stefan.
Okay.
All right. So to learn that, the best way is to get started, your head around it. What we want to achieve? So you want to talk from your application with another. Is it Firebase? Is it anything else? You want to get a weather information from somewhere? You always will have an API. So you have two things that want to communicate. And what is there is they want to communicate by a certain protocol. And usually today, this is JSON, so REST. So
Mm.
they want to talk with that. REST is kind of an architecture thing, so don't get me there completely. But yeah, so if you want to learn that, read some books, watch some videos about the topic, and also try to re-implement. Like you already said, you should always try to learn it with a tutorial, but also think about your own project and try to solve it there with this approach that you choose.
Yeah.
And then you will come to a very good solution, hopefully. And the best parts of the API to talk with them today, I think the packages are HTTP, which is working
Yes.
like always.
Yeah.
After that, you could use Dio. I heard a lot of good things about Dio. So it is also a wrapper around HTTP and allows you to have an easier error handling there.
Right. Yeah. So I think what Max have said so far is really like what you guys should do. Like for me, funny story is that when I was working as a software intern in the startup, right? I have
Mm-hmm.
no idea what API was.
Mm-hmm.
I was really such a newbie. Luckily, like my colleague was nice enough to like give me some resources to learn what API was, and then yeah, I just learned it on my own. Back then we didn't use Flutter, I mean the Firebase for our backend. It
Mm-hmm.
was using the backend of Django.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that was something that I had to learn from scratch. And then I had to learn like this tool called Postman. So
Oh,
it
nice.
helps
Yeah.
you to see your different post requests, right? So but in the end I would say the best way is according to what you're trying to do. Yeah. Because like what Max say, your API can be a simple file store call, or it can be like a post request and a
Mm-hmm.
pull, not pull request, that's not yeah, but post request or get request and such. So it
Yeah.
really depends. But don't worry, there's a lot of tutorials about Flutter. You're set. Okay. So yeah, I have a question for you. Sorry guys, inside my YouTube live stream, Max what do you call that? Webcam is being cut off, but don't worry, we can still hear him. I think that's good. That's good enough, because if I can't hear him, then I'll be talking to myself. So okay. So another question that I think maybe this will be useful to a lot of you guys is that from Himanshu, when we would know that we are ready for a junior developer position, if we are self-taught and then applying for a job. Okay, so I will answer this because I personally have experience on this.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, as a junior dev position and self-taught, so I was self-taught as well. Okay, Max, I can. Okay, cool. All right, Max, you're in. Cool. All right. So basically, what you have to do, from my experience, I would say, is that you have to show your worth. So what do I mean by show your worth? So basically, how do someone see that you're able to code in Flutter or create apps in Flutter? So for me, how I did that was it was lucky for me to find my ex employer. He Back then Flutter wasn't popular, so if you were to put Flutter in your LinkedIn, you're probably the only Flutter guy. So
Okay.
then he messaged me in LinkedIn, and then we met up one on one physically, and then I showed him how the projects that I built in Flutter. So he was like, okay lah, confident that I'm worthy enough to be a Flutter intern in his company or startup. And then that's how I got an intern. And then I showed my worth by just being able to code out the app itself, or to help with the development of the app. And then I think after maybe, I think 6 months or 3 months of internship, then I was converted into a full time. So that's my story. And like, at the same time, I think Max, you probably have a lot of requests of people trying to hire you as well, right? I don't
Yes.
know, right? So,
Yes.
so I think like, honestly, from both of us, a YouTube channel actually works.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't thought that, but it's actually a boost in your career path. To be honest, Matab has started her work this week, right? So
Yes.
she got there also, and she knows exactly the struggle. But for her, it was a very long journey. Actually, she was graduated, but in a complete different field. So she was more in the sales department or purchasing department. And then after 2 years ago, we decided that she wanted to start also with developing. And there was not really a special reason. She was just good at it and she liked it. And so she had that full story of, okay, I need to learn what a variable is, to I need to learn what a function is. And then we had like whenever we made a walk, we were talking about the same stuff. So what is an attribute? What is a
Nice.
difference between attribute and variable? What is a function? What is a method? Why do
Yeah.
they have different namings and so on and so forth? So it was really a long journey, and in that time I really understood that for me what is absolutely normal, I'm talking like that, I understand exactly what I'm talking about, but it's not absolutely understandable for everyone else. So even though that I'm saying that this is a method, and a lot of people will hear, okay, this is a method, but they don't really understand why. So to get this grasp and explaining that all the time, that helped a lot. And additionally, at the end, when she has got the job now, during the interview phase, when she had a lot of interviews and so on, I always told her, don't be afraid to don't know anything. So
Yes.
the important part here is, if you don't know it, tell them there is a reason you don't know it. We are absolutely specialized. You know, we are Flutter developers. If they ask you for, I don't know, solid principle, that is a very common principle, of course. But if you don't know it, be honest. Say, hey, I can learn that. No worries. Give me till a week long time, and I will learn it and understand it. But I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree on that because I feel that I think for a lot of people, because I maybe we had this like feeling like, oh, we are not worthy enough to
Yeah.
apply for a junior developer job. Don't worry, everyone start from somewhere.
Mhm.
Nobody starts from like a experience. I mean, there are ludicrous kind of like job what do you call that, requirements, like
Yeah.
5 years in Flutter. Hello. Flutter is not even existed. No, I mean it existed, but like it wasn't in like stable yet. So there's those ludicrous requirements. And for me, if
Mhm.
you were to see that requirement, I would highly recommend to just apply for that job
Yeah.
because they might not know. Because I think a lot of people who are doing these requirements are recruiters. So
Mhm.
they might not be tech savvy. So at the same time, like I would say, even in the interview, sometimes they will ask you technical questions, but to turn it around, I would say just show your projects, and this
Yeah.
can really showcase. And also be honest, like what Max said, if you don't know, just say you don't know. And if they don't answer you back, or they don't give you the contract to for you a job, then that's fine, just move on. Because I think a lot of us took a long time. For me, it took like for my first full-time job as a developer from the start, right? It took me almost maybe 1 year plus to become a Flutter developer, like, you know, like to be an actual developer who's
Mhm.
getting a full-time job. So people might take longer, people might take shorter. So don't have to compare with other people lah. Just
Yeah.
be in the zone, and then also join communities if you don't have anyone to talk to. Because I think the Flutter community is an amazing community. Like, we would love to help you if you have any questions.
Yeah, and I think we have everyone who has a question. And I like one part that we have here because we got a very interesting question. I think that fits like perfect to your statement right now from
Yeah.
Robert. And he's asking, when are you ready in Flutter to apply for a job? So when can you build something that shows that you are ready for a job? I think that is the question behind.
Yeah, okay, that's an excellent question to this. So the thing is that when you can build something, you're ready to apply for the jobs.
Mhm.
Uh the answer is now, actually. Like, you just build something and see whether people think it's something that, like, for example, right, I saw this YouTube video about this guy. He says that this project will help you get a job or something like that. And the
Mhm.
project, right, is basically what do you call it, bug tracker. So like, if
Mhm.
you have, like, for example, like a Kanban board or Trello, and then you make it so that, for example, you have a bug, and then it will be in the in progress column. And then
Mhm.
once you are done, then you put it into the what do you call that, the review column. So I think that's a pretty cool project that can add value to the company that you are trying to apply for, because like that will really see in them like, hey, I'm a valuable person, rather than like, oh, I coded out a to-do
Mhm.
app. Like maybe it's helpful, or I coded out a tic-tac-toe app. But in the end, also, I would say in terms of like technicality or interview wise, right? Just show whatever you have done. It doesn't have to be like a bug tracker. You can do a weather app. You can do anything. Just post it out, because I think don't be afraid of showing your work. It
Yeah,
doesn't have to be
nobody
really
will know if you don't show it, and also
correct. Correct.
be proud of it what you present,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
every line of code that you have wrote is yours. Even though if you looked it up in Stack Overflow and so on, it's also work that should be valued.
Correct.
All right.
What?
So I have
Yeah.
still a bunch of questions like more FFI, CIA, and so on and so forth. We have a lot of questions, but we are coming slowly to the end of our time, I would say.
Yeah.
So
Let's
thank
have
you
one
very
more
much.
question.
You have
Should
one
we
more
have one
question?
more
Yeah, sure.
question? I
Yeah,
don't
we
know.
have one more we can do. Come.
Okay, let me go through you have a lot more people watching
I'm
than mine.
so really, I'm sorry for.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay. Let's, I think, have, okay, maybe let's have one question that I want
Mhm.
to ask, right? So I think to end it off, right? I think one question we should ask ourselves is, what are we looking forward in Flutter?
Mhm.
Yeah. So Max, what are you looking forward to the future of Flutter? What do you want to get from Flutter? Like
What I
a
want to get. Okay. So I
yes.
was never really a full-fledged mobile developer. I have no
Right.
experience in Android. Not really. I had once where I wrote an app with all that XML stuff, but I really hated, so I stopped it. And then I moved to all that web development and application development. So I'm coming more from C# and or web development, where I create something with Angular and so on. And I had this capabilities to work from desktop and create all that stuff, and also made it media possibility. So for me, my personal goal is the first time when I run Flutter Web and I can rotate my image without breaking anything and have the same performance in all browsers.
Oh
If
yes.
that
Oh
would
yes.
be fantastic,
Oh
because
my
for me,
god.
this is currently the biggest downside, that the performance in Mozilla, I think, is horrible compared to Chrome. But of course, the Flutter team is working on that. But at the moment, it's really a struggle, and it's very hard to sell to my customers if I say, yeah, you can do web, but not on Firefox.
Yeah. There's always that caveat. And I would totally agree. Like honestly, I would say that Flutter, if the Flutter web
Mhm,
framework, right, would be as fast as a React website or Vue or
mhm.
Angular or whatever website, right? I think that will be a game changer.
Yeah.
Because I think that means that I think any companies can build a website and an app with just one code base. And that's like,
Mhm.
I think most of what the developers out there are like asking for. Like, we want a website that's fast and working on every web browser. Yes, and I do agree. Like people ask me in the comments like, hey, Mozilla is not working well, Safari is not exactly good, Chrome good, fine, but the
Yeah.
others like, "Ugh." And then I think a lot of people also are asking about SEO support. So I think a
Yeah.
lot of people have a lot of interest in Flutter
Mhm.
Web. And I think in the desktop, I have not seen desktop, but I think the desktop side of things is pretty there. But it's just the
Mhm.
web is, everyone is waiting for that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
fast
It's
web
everything,
response.
right? I
Yeah,
mean, web
yeah,
means that it is everywhere automatically, on every phone, on every device, on desktop, everywhere.
yeah.
So I think if this is coming, I mean, it's in beta now and it's going slowly to production. And
Mm.
of course, it will take some time, maybe 1 or 2 years, give it some time. But at the moment, I really think that Flutter has a very good chance to overrule a lot of technologies.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is my personal view. I don't know. Maybe our friends in the chat can also give their comments. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think yeah, a lot of us are really waiting for Flutter Web. I think Flutter has already been more than stable enough in terms of the mobile app development side.
Yeah.
There are
True.
maybe some quirks here and there, but I think it's just the web that is, we are like, we can't wait, because then we can do PWA, we can do like yeah, so that's just one code base and we don't have to learn HTML,
Yeah.
CSS, JavaScript. But
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the dream that we are looking forward to. I think we can end great on this live stream.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was fantastic. For that we have just one technical issue, and it was on my side. Which surprise!
Which is fine. Which is fine. We are
But I'm pretty
developers. We
happy
need
with
to.
that. Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, we managed 2 live streams here on simultaneously, which
Oh
worked
my.
perfect. And I think we had a very good time. Everyone had a good time, I hope.
Yeah. Yes.
And yeah, so I hope we can do that more often in the future. And
Definitely.
thank you very much for the great idea to do that.
All right, no problem. Yes. So, yeah, if you guys haven't subscribed to Max, you should subscribe to him. He does really live streams, and always donate because he's doing it full time. So support him as much as you guys can, and he really explains things very well. Because there was one video I remembered. I was like searching up for value listener, and I have no idea what value listener is. Like came across his video, and he explained it very well about what value listener are. So I was like, wow, okay, that's really cool. And yeah, check out his videos and YouTube channel. Support him, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same for the
So
Happy Harris. He has a fantastic channel. I also watched nearly all of your views and also your creation of speed code. I was always at the beginning, I was watching all of them because I was like, okay, what can I learn there? And this, and there is something new. And that was really fantastic. And so it really helped me a lot to see how you create these different views and how I can bring them into my app. So it's really fantastic. And I hear already in the chat a lot of, I subscribe to you both, I'm with you, and you make a good job. So I take that as a compliment. We should take that.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, subscribe for us only. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So yeah, so if you guys have any questions, you can put it in the comments, and then we probably can reply them as well, because we did not answer all of the questions.
No,
And yeah, and you can follow us in our social medias and such. And I think that's about it. Anything to add, Max?
No,
before we
but
end.
Thank you for everything, and enjoy the rest of your week. I would say now it's weekend, or cool.
Weekend. Oh yeah, TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Enjoy your weekends. I mean, you can learn coding as well, or Flutter, or watch some videos.
I think it's exactly the same, right? So
all right. So see you guys. Bye bye.